Hello, this is Stephen Rudolph, and this is Multiple Natures Live, where I'm going to share with you tips and ideas and insights about how you can align your potential with what it is that you do so you can thrive. And I'm coming to you live from Cambodia, which is why you might hear in the background a hawker outside who's selling some noodles and porridge for breakfast. So, in case you come to Cambodia and you want to be on the show here with me live, you'll be able to avail of these incredible services of the street hawkers who come around daily with that kind of good stuff. But we're not talking about feeding our stomachs. We're talking about feeding tigers. And as you might know from our program, tigers are your natural abilities and your natural tendencies. And when you understand what they are and you align them with what you do, life is so much better. It's so much easier. And in today's program, I have a very special guest with me who is a two-time award winner. And I hear him laughing in the background, so let me get
I don't know
Pete.
if I don't know if you're also hearing that. I know that I don't have hawkers at the door. Well, maybe I do. I actually need to check. The doorbell just rang, so
Uh-huh.
I will be listening to your introduction, and I'll be introducing whoever it is that's at the door. It might actually fuel the conversation. Be right back.
Okay, well, this is certainly a place where we welcome spontaneity and serendipity. And so while Pete is going to answer his door, I'm going to tell you about who he is because he's an amazing person. He's a two-time Emmy Award winner for photojournalism. And I'm going to ask him a little bit about that because what he won his award for was absolutely pathbreaking and groundbreaking. He's a fellow seeker. And this is really what endears me to him because he's so interested in himself, self-improvement, and new practices. Who was there, by the way?
Oh, a dear friend, Lisa Meckes.
Okay, okay. How's it going? Welcome to the live show. You might be on the hot seat next.
Yeah,
And
he's definitely what you're doing. Yeah.
and he'll share a little bit. What I'm saying is that Pete is also a fellow seeker, somebody who um, I'm so endeared to because of his openness and authenticity in self exploration and just being absolutely genuine in that process. And so we're going to be talking about his own journey and some of the ways that he is applying tigers to his life. And we're also going to be talking about a topic of the concept of the hero, right? And the hero's journey, because Pete has an idea for a book that he's been planning for a while. And we're going to be re-examining the idea of a hero. And he's going to share a little bit more about that with us. And so, Pete, I'd like to welcome you to feeding your tigers on Multiple Natures Live. So thanks for coming.
Thank you, Stephen. So great to be with you. Appreciate it.
And so
Do I need I know the list would be really long for your achievements, much
what's
longer
that?
than
Yeah, all right.
we
Well,
have.
people know that stuff. It's in the show notes in case anybody wants to go in and find out about that. But we're here now, and you're my guest, and I'm sure, going to want to know about you because I'm fascinated with you. And every time I have a conversation with you, I always come away more. I feel richer. I feel wiser. I feel somehow like cleaner about myself and about life and optimistic. So that's what I hope our audience also comes away with. So yeah, and the other thing I forgot to mention is that you are, in addition to all of those things, you are somebody who really knows how to wire things up in life, um, both professionally as an electrician, and I would even dare say, like, you managed to take those wiring skills to the next level in what I might say human wiring, in
Mm,
wiring a successful life for yourself. So let's first jump back to the Emmy, because that was also something I didn't know until I asked you for some details for the show. So tell me a little bit about how you won a two-time Emmy award-winning photojournalist. What was that
they're
all
very
about?
different. Yeah, they were very different. Well, same award, but very different category. The first one was for just a straight up documentary on earthquakes and it was called Where the Fault Lies. It was about San Andreas Fault here in California. And the second, which you were excited by, was this. It was a technical achievement award where my job was to sit in the back of a helicopter as an aerial photojournalist and shooting the news for the local news stations. And so what we were doing was covering this giant foot race. The Beta Breakers is internationally known, but some probably have or have not heard of it. Either way, it's wild. People dress up and it's like a full-on. They call it the Beta Breakers, so it's like the bay of the Bay Area to the breakers to the ocean, to ocean. People get dressed up, and of course, in freakish style, San Francisco comes out and comes alive.
Sounds very, very San Francisco.
Yeah. So they want to capture all the stuff that's happening on the ground, not just because of the competitive aspect, but there are just people wearing wild stuff. And so there's a motorcycle that is taking the feed from a camera, and then they were repeating it with a transponder and sending that up to the belly of the aircraft that I'm sitting in. And then we're sending that signal off to the mountaintop, which is then bouncing back to the station. And so on the fly, if you will, I'm live editing the motorcycle feed from our feed, because I'm also then controlling the camera, so giving a wider shot or zooming in on the front runners or something interesting happening in the crowd. So it was cool because I was able to both be the videographer and editing live video.
It sounds like a lot to do at one time. I'm having enough trouble just I have some simple buttons I have to push back and forth between these screens. You're in the back of in a helicopter doing this.
Well, I didn't have to fly. I mean, if I stacked that.
Right. That could have given you a Nobel Prize if you had to fly it at the same time.
It could have gone both ways.
And so
that's
what that was for. And so, we're talking here about. So you're a person who has some amazing life experiences, and we're talking today about. We're going to be talking about the idea of a hero and re-examining the hero and the hero's journey. So you've had these adventures, and I just love the idea. Joseph Campbell, in case you're not aware of the idea of the hero's journey, Joseph Campbell, famous mythologist, and I'll put some links down in the show notes for that in case you don't know who he is. But he's more popularly known for co-writing the Star Wars story with George Lucas, based on his lifetime of exploration of traditional archetypes and story types and myths all over the world. And he's found that there's a consistent pattern, a story where there's a hero, and the hero gets the call and then enters the call into the journey or into the adventure, and then dives in and has all sorts of trials and tribulations, and winds up going into the belly of the beast and fighting a dragon or a demon who winds up being themselves ultimately in the end, and then a return to the normal world with some sort of transformation that's taken place and some kind of gift that they bring to the world. That's the hero's journey in a really short, a shortened way. And everybody's kind of going through that. And so, Pete, you're also going through this hero's journey. So maybe we talk about, your place in the journey, where you are now, and maybe also how the Tigers have some connection to that.
Well, God, I'm trying to figure out related to which chapter of the hero's journey it might follow. It's sort of it's not the dislocation from community, but in some ways I'm sort of coming back with what I've learned about a post-career apocalypse. My wife and I have built out a integrative healthcare center, and we're opening it in like 5 days. So it's been a birthing of many sorts, and I was starting that process of my life and her career journey. Her career journey started 20 years ago. She is, talk about a hero. She's amazing. People are coming from miles and hours away to see her, but we're building this space, right? So I I ran an electrical company for 15 years, had to kind of stop that and focus on the healing arts clinic, which is going to have multiple types of practitioners. And I thought I was getting a break. I thought I was going on sabbatical, and like, oh, this just happens to be, I'm going to help my wife build out this clinic, and something that I, a skill set that I have, I can give to her in a way she understands. I thought it was a kind of a triple stack win, win, win. And the truth is I'm just burnt out. And so like, we're coming to the end of this. It's been a struggle, created, fallout in our marriage, all sorts of stuff that was just really unforeseen. A lot of people start a journey, if you will, like this, thinking like, oh my God, it's going to be so romantic. We're going to have these wins. And that's true. We have had wins. And getting into business with a romantic partner, with my wife, it's a lot. There's not a break from the, we have to stick with it. And so all the tigers
kind of going at it all day together, and then after work is done, you're back home at night. And I'm going to guess that the conversations might even still revolve around what was going on during the daytime.
Has to be, and we're both fighters. So we just kept pushing. And so now this gets back to your sort of how you started this question, which is like, I wanted to start writing a book 6 months ago, thought I was going to gracefully achieve this build out of the clinic. And I wouldn't say it was graceful, but we're nearing completion.
So you thought you were going to be writing the book like side by side while you were like helping?
Yeah. Oh my goodness. I thought I'd have time for everything. Yeah. My wife challenged with me. Time management. So I thought it was all possible. And it turns out that I had to just purely pretty much focus on the clinic. So now, come January 2nd or 3rd or whatever, I will have space in my life to work on this book, which is based on roughly the hero's journey, but not like there's just some nods at it, but more really a question of like, what is it to really sit with discomfort? Because a lot of the traditional heroes don't have to sit with discomfort. They go save someone. There is a call and a response, and there's someone wounded or be on the fringe of being wounded, and the hero swoops them up. But what happens? Some of my greatest understandings about this world, this life I'm living, have come from wounds, my sacred wounds. And if I didn't have them, if somebody swooped up and just, I would say, robbed me of that experience, for better or worse, I don't know that I'd be the person I am now. And
that's super interesting, because I think when we think of heroes, we think of people who are sort of indomitable, like, right? They have they have superpowers, right? That's one of the things that we expect of heroes, that they have these superpowers, and that they're impervious to pain, or right, they only have this empowered side that we see. They come in and they save the day. So what you're sharing is really the kind of like the hero more as a real human being with real feelings, and not just that, but it seems that as though what you're saying is that the pain that the hero goes through is also important.
And I believe there have been some nods to heroes having this sort of filled out personality, where there's like maybe some character flaws and places where they are very human, and failings, and but really in the end, this is sort of facing us all in a way. Like there's a landscape, entire landscape of things that we could work on, right? Decreasing the carbon in the atmosphere, saving the whales, recycling more, working. I mean, there's just a plethora of places we could put our energy, and yet we have to choose something. And so by choosing something, we're ignoring something else, and we're therefore ranking what's important and what's worth saving in a way. And so when we all make these choices, suffers, and what happens with that thing that's suffering. Like it might even be ourselves that suffers as a result of like our parenting or where we're efforting in a certain direction.
Sure.
And so like those sufferings in those places of deficit or yearning or hunger or malnourishment or whatever might actually be places that we're actually strengthening. And hadn't thought of it that way until now, but really it's like deprivation for an experience of getting more.
I just want you to tease that out a little bit, because one of the things that I hope for on our shows, this is totally non-scripted, in case you didn't notice.
Yeah.
Right? But I want well I mean, like I see interviews sometimes, and I see like very canned questions and canned responses, and nothing could be more boring than that. But what I hope for here in our discussions is that like something some things come out that are raw, and there's an aha moment. So I mean, I just want you to, if you could tease that out just a little bit, what you've just shared.
Sure. Yeah, I almost interrupted myself with a tease out, and I'm glad you're asking, because what immediately came to my head was my mother was a nun for 6 years. She was in the convent as a Dominican sister, and there would be an entire segment of the day where they were they took a vow of not only celibacy, obviously, but a vow of poverty. And there's a doing without, right? And even within the day, there's times where you can't even speak. And this is years ago. I don't know how the Dominican sisters roll now, but it made me think of like what that's doing, and in fact, what we do when we meditate, it is a deprivation of all the places our mind could go. Just really getting into a focused myopic space, really around like the breath, or depending on the practice you're involved with. But what can happen as a result of shutting out some things, or not feeding everything? And I guess we can go right into the tigers with this one, but like sort of deciding like, not right now. I'm just gonna be in this space and looking at this thing. And so if this ties into the book idea in any way, I suppose it's that we all have sort of the monkeys that drag on our focus. And if we are to just look at one thing, like it's great to see what we can do with that, and where how good something can become as a result of our attention on it. But what happens, like if we're to look at like all the, some of our superheroes, or like if we were to dig into any personality type and somebody known for something really great, like you might see some other place in their life where things are just really atrophied. And that's interesting to me. It's not where the cameras point. So I don't know. That's enough of a tease. I can always go further.
Well, I think what I like about that, it's sort of like there are two superheroes that come to mind. One is Superman, the other is, well, Santa Claus, right? So it's like, why Santa Claus? And he could be like at everybody's house to like to deliver gifts, like an unlimited presence in everybody's house, so to speak, right? I mean, it was not a traditional superhero, but I mean, something like Superman, like we've seen these things where his speed accelerates so he can like fix all these problems at one time. And I think what you're rightly pointing out is it's not possible for me to be in so many places at one time, and that I do have to draw boundaries, and that but in doing so, right, that gives me this ability to sink deeply into a challenge that I'm addressing, and to be aware and conscious also of what it is that I'm addressing and what it is that I'm doing, and also to permit some space for me to evolve and to grow in that process. In other words, that it's not simply about swooping in and solving somebody else's problem, but it's an opportunity for me also to learn something and to evolve in that process. I mean, here it's like, and I think this happens quite a bit with very boring and flat heroes, is that they don't change, they don't evolve. And for me, one of the most interesting parts of any kind of movie or film or story is where there's an evolution that takes place. There's an evolution of the individual, an evolution of the hero. Otherwise, if they're just impervious to pain and to problems from the beginning to the end, then it's just kind of like a boring action movie, or I don't know, something like that. So
Yeah, we've really seen that over the last 10 to 20 years, I think, in the way that films kind of start capturing who we think is the protagonist or is the protagonist, but who we think is a hero. And all of a sudden, like, rounding it out so that you question whether or not, like, is this the good guy or the, like,
right,
I sort of
yeah,
breaking that. Yeah.
yeah. There have been a lot of I don't know if they're anti-heroes, but there have been a lot of people like, let's say Breaking Bad, for example, like Walter White.
Right.
He's doing all
Yeah.
this stuff, and it's like highly illegal. He's cooking meth and whatnot. But we see a human side of a person, and we see an evolution, and we see their soft side, and we see them going through changes. And well, I think what I appreciate about that kind of hero, at least, is that, well, it's more real. I know that each person has we all have our own dark sides, and
Yeah.
that's and I think that it's important to recognize that. Even some great figures, like for example, Alan Watts, the incredible theologian and philosopher. He was so, his thinking was just so profound, but at the same
Mm-hmm.
time, he struggled with alcoholism, and there are many people who,
That's what
um,
killed him.
yeah, and he died quite young, in his mid 50s, and there are a lot of people who have been highly critical of him, and um, discrediting his work because of that, saying like, well, if he was so knowledgeable and he was so um, wise and enlightened, then why was he afflicted by such a problem? Well, then there are also people who are saying, look, man, that has one has nothing to do with the other. He's a human being just like everybody else. He might have his realizations, but he
Right.
also has had his demons. So, well, I'm
And
not.
why separate? Yeah, I mean, not to put too fine a point on it, but really, like, I think that's part of my point is, like, don't, like, that's actually whatever his struggle with alcoholism was or is, it was, I guess, um, it made him who he is. And so, like,
Mm,
and as we were speaking a little bit beforehand around, like, what is my sacred wound? Like, I can't separate myself from that.
mm,
So it's brought me to who I am and where I am now.
mm,
And would I trade that in? No.
yeah.
So if someone were to swoop down and take the experience, remove the experience that was sort of created my
Mm,
cascade of wounding or whatever for me,
mm,
um, I don't know that if I could go back in time, if I would stop that person, like, this is,
mm.
I
That's a
know that I
really
wouldn't be
interesting
connected
point.
to you, you know? And so why take that, like, that should, why do we want our heroes to be so whitewashed? Like,
Yeah.
like, why did Alan Watts have to be sober? Like, okay, it would have,
Mm,
he robbed us of living longer. And I really love
mm,
listening to his stuff, but, like,
mm,
there's something to examine there. Like, what is the context?
mm.
Not that we should all run and become alcoholics in order to become
Become Alan
even
Watts, or
found as
become
Alan
enlightened
Watts,
like
right?
him, right?
Yeah, it's not the path, but there's something there that's a clue to the human trajectory, right? And that's what I
Mm.
want to dig into.
That's really super. I know he had a quote. I forget exactly how it went. I've heard others also quote something like that, which was something like, I don't trust a person who's too perfect or who doesn't have any vices
Yeah, yeah,
whatsoever. So,
they're
well, I
hiding
mean,
something.
well, sure. And for me, I think that that's also one of the things that's endeared me to the Eastern perspective um, of life and philosophy. Like we have the yin yang, right? So the yin yang has dark and light. It has, right, the positive and the negative, and it embraces both. Demonstrates that we have all of those qualities within us, and it's a matter of managing them as opposed to ridding ourselves of the darkness. It's recognizing that it exists and finding a way to dovetail that or to integrate it into into my life in a way. And so there it is. And I think you just said it. All right. So which is that, right? That wound, that dark side, can it be harnessed and used for good?
Yeah.
Can that rather than to be allowed to escape and then wreak havoc in the world, there's certainly a way to take that wound and to dovetail it or to convert it or to harness it into something that that creates that
Hmm.
creates good somehow. So
I'm just struck right now by in that, like, if you are listening to that, the result of that wound, or if you're listening to the voice that comes from that wound, it I don't want to say should, because, well, who knows what parts of our brain get shut off through blockages or whatever, but like that, really, if it is the strongest influence on how we live our lives, as sacred wounds sometimes can be, that becomes the loudest message. And if you can listen to the loudest message happening
mm,
within oneself, right,
mm,
that becomes a place for real presencing. Like, it's easy to sort of ignore a lot of little quiet voices, but if there's one voice that's standing out,
mm,
and it's kind of dictating behavior in a certain way, like, it can, through that, if we're listening, we can get to the core of maybe who we are,
mm.
and what's influencing a lot of our decision making, and like really then start hacking uh why we make choices the way we do. And like, this is a great, I'm going to dovetail for you into multiple natures, because like, this is one
Good.
of the, yeah, right, better me than you probably.
Well, if we arrive there naturally, then it's so much
Yeah,
better. That's
we
why I
did.
say, like, I like to have an open conversation, and multiple natures is always there, someplace in the background.
It's so true. And I just realized, like, that was one of the most beneficial things for me in taking your course, was um, recognizing that there are a lot of things that I could choose if I, and um, I have affinity for a lot of different things. I mean, as you'll see on the little spider web of my chart or
Mm,
whatever, um, but to choose the thing that I'm strongest at is going to be the most efficient way I can use my time, and to
mm,
recognize that that other things can be, I can possibly do them, but it's just going to take more energy and efforting,
mm,
and possibly be a struggle to really achieve like the
mhm,
same level that if I were really wise with my time and
mm,
wise with the way I delegate, that I get
mm,
somebody else that I know to be the, accountant in my company, or the, somebody who really likes that, maybe even,
mhm,
um, instead of beating my head against the wall because I can do it, but do I love it? And not
mm,
only do I love it, is it something that's natural to me? And so, like, that was such a valuable takeaway for me around, like, how to employ the limited number of hours I have on this planet,
yeah,
and use it as effectively as possible. If I'm and enjoy it, like, that's
sure,
the underlying crucial piece, is like,
sure.
okay, how am I going to be the person that I want to be with the time that I have on.
Absolutely. I think what's interesting here is that when I think about I was thinking about this yesterday a lot. I went to go visit my wife's village, her ancestral village here in Cambodia. And we had a long car drive, and so it was a little mini vacation. And so while we were there, and especially on the way back, I was just driving through these rice fields, and I was just contemplating, and I was thinking about this idea of purpose, right? Purpose, like you were saying at the beginning, have it, like when we talk about a hero, there's usually, when we think about it in terms of ourselves, there's some thought that, okay, I'm here to do something to bring my energy in a way that's going to solve some sort of problem or address some, bring some good to the world, to help others in a way, quote unquote, save something or someone, and so on.
Mm,
And one is the purpose. So there might be some grander purpose. And the second is what I do in order to achieve that purpose. In other words, if my goal is to do something, um, whether it's to do something for helping wildlife or um, helping in terms of education or literacy or whatever it might be, um, my role in that could be varied, right? My role could be someone who's working to do something, as a mentor, somebody who helps make graphic design elements for somebody, or who gets involved in a social community as a moderator, or somebody who just financially contributes. There are n number of ways that I could be involved in the doing side of things, and then that comes back to, well, where are my natural abilities with respect to that particular purpose? It's not that I can do everything myself. I'm not and this is, I think, also a really big misconception with the idea of the superhero, is like they sort of swoop in by themselves to save the
Yeah.
day. Okay, like now we see the Justice League, so we see them like working together as a team, but still by and large, there's this idea that they are wholly or solely capable themselves of solving those problems. And in the real world, well, that's just not the case. We need teams of people, groups of people, where different people put forward what their natural abilities are. And it's enough. Where I wanted to bring this back to is that it's enough that I have my dark side, or I have my wounds that I need to reconcile, or I need to deal with and to overcome. But then if I'm working on some purpose and I'm trying to use my energy for good in the world, if I'm not doing it in a way that's according to what my abilities are, then it's like I'm just setting myself up for another obstacle, like another sort of pain point. In other words, if I'm not naturally adept at being an entrepreneur, or being, let's say, organized, etc., and I want to help some organization in their fundraising, etc., and I put myself into that position, even if the purpose is the right purpose, something that I feel towards, but my abilities
Yeah.
aren't there, well, I'm going to fail in doing that because it's just not who I am. And I see a lot of
Yeah.
people who struggle with that, especially when it comes to like volunteer work. They get involved and they've got this purpose that they want to work toward. But then once they get involved in it, they actually don't enjoy doing it. And then they feel really bad because it becomes like their heart's in
Well,
the
it's
right place and they want to be doing something good that delivers something to the world. But then um, they don't like it. And then they start wondering, what's wrong with me? And
oh
so,
God.
so I like to point out that there are many ways that you can work toward your purpose, and
Yeah.
you're not setting yourself up to failure with engaging the wrong tigers.
And you don't want to keep creating sacred wounds.
That's such a good point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I love one of the things that you said back there around this idea of like this singular hero that comes through and handles the handles everything that's possibly handles everything alone, and we know that that's not the best way of working, and yet somehow, and this is really what I'm curious about, like why it seems we all want to see that, like I will include myself, like when we go see live music, it's like, who's the front person, like what's their personality, like what's the singer emoting, and like weird, I'm not paying much attention to the drummer.
Oh, I have a point on this. Finish what you're saying, but keep going.
Yeah,
Yes,
yeah,
keep
okay.
going.
Yeah, so I mean, I moved metaphor, but the way that we sort of expected, like all our heroes to have like handled something front to back, and then I look at something like Black Lives Matter or another movement, and because Black Lives Matter didn't have like a singular front person, it was hard for people to sort of like get a hold of what it is or what it was. They couldn't point to this thing or this person. And it's like we expect one person, I think, to embody the energy of the movement, and without a singular face, it becomes. I think people. I don't know. Maybe we want to. relate too closely one single human to like how the feel of an entire movement, and because just to guess that the complexities of just taking in um, a multitude of energies feels too difficult. I don't know what it is. I struggle with that. I wonder, like,
That's
even,
interesting. Even when we go back to think about what happened around 9/11, where there were these networks of insurgents and whatnot, and um, we were looking as Americans, or the government looking for some body to pin that on, and then it was like this wild sort of attacking and accusations, and it was very difficult, and try to pin it on a bin Laden or something like that. So yeah, sometimes it becomes easier to that's an example from the negative side, right? But when there's someone and something to pin it to, it makes it a little bit easier to deal with and to articulate. But here on the positive side, I think what you're saying is also so that when we're looking for doing good and doing well in the world, there's these idea of these myths when we talk about heroes, right? Whether Joseph Campbell talked about them or anyone else. Um, I think sometimes we tend to not realize that the oh yes, we have a furry friend in the who is this? You may introduce.
he's yelling at me. I didn't want him to kind of
No,
create.
that's okay. Everyone's welcome on Multiple Natures Live. What's his her name? There,
It's a he. It's Eros.
heroes.
He loves a hug, and he's just really up in the
Okay, all
grill
right.
with
Well,
you.
Heroes should have a hug.
Eros is
Um,
in the room.
mm. And so I think sometimes the misconception is that the hero is somebody who is perfect, is somebody else who's going to come in and save the day, and somebody who is perfect. And coming back to that Alan Watts um, example that I was giving before, there was somebody who had said something to the effect that if he hadn't had some sort of a personal challenge as he did with alcoholism, he might have been it might have been overwhelming, if somebody was
Mm,
that perfect, because then you would look
mm,
at that person and then you say, well, I could never be like that. They're too perfect. And so when we look at our heroes as extraordinary people who are superhuman that way, then they become difficult to emulate or difficult to absorb lessons from, because we think to ourselves, well, I've got all these flaws. I could never become like that. So therefore, I'm just not even going to think about that. I'll just let that person be the hero because they're perfect, and I'm just like my crummy, imperfect self, and I'm just going to you know not aspire to that. So
yeah.
sometimes understanding that people have these flaws gives us the ability to recognize that in ourselves, and to take steps. Alan Watts, for all of the charges that, or the complaints, that criticisms that people have about him, was working till his last breath, writing a book on Taoism. So
Hmm.
he was engaged in still working at that time.
Yeah, I mean, finding the equal opportunity hero, like that's what I got from what you were just saying too.
Mm,
Is like, don't make it something outside of us.
mm.
The stories of old perpetuated that idea that it was just like something that was not, that we were looking for someone to come help
Yep,
when you are the hero.
yep.
Yeah.
Even the Eastern, like the Indian philosophy, the Bhagavad Gita, the story of Arjun in the Bhagavad Gita, he's a warrior who has a dilemma that he's facing. He's got to fight this battle, and half of the other on the enemy side are many of his family members. His grandfather wound up on that side. His own guru, his own teacher, wound up on the enemy side, and so he's perplexed about what to do. And eventually, he's got to overcome this this internal strife, and if you read the philosophy and the commentaries, we understand that he's the hero, but he's every man, that every person has to go through that hero's that transformation to
Yeah.
understand that I've got a dilemma that I have to face and that I have to stand up to. I want to come back to one point before, because you said it's something I've been thinking about, and I've not shared this before. I wanted to write a blog post about this, but it comes back to the Beatles. When you're talking about musicians and the frontman, that who my favorite member of the Beatles is, and it's Ringo.
Interesting.
And even as a drummer, is one of my absolute favorites. Not because of some complex techniques or things like that, but because, and if you go back and listen to Beatles music, he brought to the music, in terms of drumming and percussion, whatever the song needed. Like, you don't hear him per se, like thrusting his personality into the song, but if it needed just a shaker, then he just brought a shaker. Or if it needed just a straight driving beat or whatever, that's what he brought to it.
Yeah.
And so to me, that's like the greatest hero is the one who brings to the situation whatever is needed to make others shine, or to make the situation improve itself, without saying bum bum bum, here I come to save the day. That means that mighty it's not that I've saved the day. It's you
Right.
know it's that the person brings what they need. And in fact, if you read the Tao Te Ching, and I'll leave a quote in the show links to my favorite version of it. It's Ron Hogan's version, which is just so much fun and very natural in the language, and fun in the language that he uses. Um, that the hero does, well, the master, he calls it the master or leader. He doesn't say the hero per se, but he does what's needed, doesn't take credit, and doesn't. It's not after the credit. Does what he needs to do, and then goes on his way. Like, that's the ideal master. Calls it master, but I think here it's really, you can swap in the word hero.
Yeah, actually, if you swap the idea of the word hero for leader,
Mm-hmm.
I've jumped ahead of myself, but the analogy I would have to what you just said was, there's this idea that, or a saying that the master cleans the dojo, sweeps the dojo.
Right.
Um, there's an understanding that when we come into a space that isn't clean, our minds are cluttered. We can't see clearly, that there isn't the focus that we have, so that the person behind the scenes, the master, it's not a chore that's lowly. It's not something that is meant for like a peasant or a servant or whatever, or a house cleaner,
Mm-hmm.
not any ranking behind that, but just like, this is the job of the seer, the one that sees that's actually, I'm creating a context for those around me to shine. And so that's where I swap the idea of master for leader, because leader is, this is something my mother taught me, is the definition of a good leader is someone who creates leaders out of others.
Right.
And so that a successful master or leader cleaning the space is actually creating, or in your case, like Ringo Starr, dropping the backbeat for, in the
Right.
context, the highest quality deliverable, the highest experience available. That's the job of the hero slash
The
leader
real
slash.
leader. Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
there's this great line in the Tao Te Ching that says something like, like one kind of leader comes in and says, here I am, watch what I do. But the greatest is that when even people don't say anything about him, and they say, hey, look what we've done.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, that's where they're so far in the back, and as you've rightly said, just creating that space that allows them to conquer. I mean, essentially, that's what I understand it to be about. It gives them the space and the tools to be able to conquer the demons that they're facing, or channel that negative energy and turn it into something positive. That's what
Mm.
they hear the master, the leader is actually doing, and where they don't see it, and they're like, "Whoa, man! Look what it is that I've achieved in this." So
And it's the neat thing about what you're describing is a feedback loop, because when I've been enrolled uh, with a cause or with a group of people that are trying to do something, when I hear that we're doing something, and
yeah,
it just helps me come back again and again. And so the leaders that I've learned from have taught me that that's actually how you collect energy, and that's how you keep people engaged, is that you remind them that we all did this, that we're not separating. Sorry, this cat is really being demanding right now. I'm gonna just
hey Rose,
bring him back up.
come on in.
You're welcome on the scene.
Let's
Come on
go.
up here. Oh,
There you go.
oh, he just wants to
Oh, look
hug.
at that. That's a nice hug right there. So
Anyway,
so so let's do
people.
one. Let's do
Yeah,
one thing, so we can also bring in part of the multiple natures
sure.
angle into this, and I'll try to tie this into what we're talking about right now, which is that one of the ways that I, as or you, whomever it is, as a participant wanting to be heroic, is bringing
Mm,
the qualities that I have to the space and bringing what the situation, coming back to Ringo, bringing what the situation, whatever the situation requires, whatever it is that I have, I bring that to the space.
mm.
And wow, wow, this is, wow. The connection that my brain is making right now is exactly to what you were saying at the very beginning of our conversation, which is that I can't do everything. I
Mm,
can't, solve all of the world's problems, or even in a given situation. I can't be the one who's like bringing everything to every part of the situation to solve it, you know? Or where I'm trying to be the Superman and do in a particular problem, whether it's with my company or whether it's something in my community, that if I try to be the person who does it all, then I'm going to fail. And so whether it's at that macro level of purpose, trying to attack multiple purposes simultaneously, can't do, or even in a given a single situation, if you have like a parent that you're taking care of because they're unwell and they need support, you're trying to like hold down your job and take care of your family and also look after you. So that's also not good and not possible, trying to be that sort of hero. Because then what happens with me, I don't know about you, Pete, but I know with me, then what happens is like, I want to be that hero. And then I also want to be acknowledged for that,
oh,
right?
yeah.
Just watch me. I'll take care of all this by myself. Just watch and see. And then if I do it, then I want to be recognized for it. Like my ego jumps out, right? And it's like, I want people to say, oh, wow. I mean, it's subtle, but I know that I'm not beyond this. And I want to be, praised for that. And then sometimes if like, I don't get that praise, and I get indignant. I get, oh, you didn't even notice that I did that. And so then I start like, I go after my wife or
That's
demand,
very. You're not.
some some kind of acknowledgement or, good and kind words. And it's not enough that so I'm just wondering whether it's just more realistic, authentic to look at a situation and say, okay, this is what's going on right now. And this is what I can bring to this situation
Mm.
naturally and effectively. I can't bring it all, but I could bring this, and this would make this situation better. And when I'm done with doing that, it's okay. I get acknowledged or not, it's okay. I brought my own quality, so I enjoyed doing it. I was effective, and I can sort of step out and then find some other space or place to bring my goods, my wares, my stuff. What do you think?
Yeah, and you're reminding me of something that this wonderful meditation teacher taught me. Her name's Spring Washerman. It's um, that the truth always comes out, and no matter how long it takes, the truth will always come out.
Mm.
And so, not to facilitate further your need to be recognized or the ability to you know look for that as an outcome of your good deeds, but that I've realized when when I can be patient, that those words come around, and not that that's what should fuel my doing,
You're
but
saying that,
if
but
that's,
that they automatically they come. Is that what you're?
it's going to eventually show up, like
Mm,
somebody's going to recognize who or what I am or what I'm doing, and maybe ways I don't even know. Maybe the ways that I'm efforting to get seen, maybe that's not even how someone's valuing me. In fact, sometimes those ways that I want to be seen aren't actually the deepest ways I can be seen. And that when someone recognizes something else that I'm not trying to show off, that it actually goes to more of the core of a compliment that I couldn't even have imagined. And that's not even something I know to ask for. When someone recognizes some core way that I am, they might not even like it, but it's illuminating nonetheless. And I think that's what we're here for, right? Like that's what Multiple Natures is here for, like to really get a sense of like who I am, and therefore best what I can do and should do. Maybe, I don't know. What's the best way I can place my efforts?
Yes.
And if somebody's reflecting some compliment to me around a way that's like true to my core, that's the time to really listen. Those are the moments that I can actually. It's funny, the emotional part doesn't even come in, like, oh, I was expecting that, or oh, like, God, it's about time, or whatever. I don't even have a place to respond. It's like, wow, it's almost like looking at someone else, like, well, that's curious you even saw that. Thanks, I guess. That's just how I am, or who I am. And it doesn't become like I don't know, the transactional piece that you were
Right. I was
alluding
just
to.
thinking that, right? Almost like the obligatory compliment
Yeah.
or thanks. But when a person
Yeah.
when a person genuinely says something, yeah, that those compliments I think are right. They're the most satisfying. They're the most satisfying when
And
you're
and
yeah.
can take me by surprise. Like I don't know, like if my wife, I thought I was funny, and then I met my wife and she didn't think I was funny, but she did think I had a big heart. And I was like, that's not how I need you to see me. I want you to think I'm funny. But that value that she expressed was something that I I go, God, she really just loves me. She sees me. And that became a more word isn't impressive. It became a more important way to see myself. Like maybe I don't need to be pushing an agenda around like how I should be or need to be seen. Maybe I'm just gonna come with what I got, and people are gonna see it. And yeah, maybe there doesn't even need to be a compliment. I don't know. Yeah.
Well, you know where I see that a lot now. My daughter is 2.5, and she yeah, she needs a lot of help. She now can very clearly state, "Daddy, help me! Daddy, help me!" And she requires all sorts of assistance everywhere, from getting to the bathroom to getting some certain toys to do what she wants them to do, or food wise, etc. And there's no real, thanks don't come from her, and
Right.
often thanks don't come from my wife also, because as the saying goes, the tenor, the tenor doesn't get applause for clearing his throat, right? So there's some things that I'm just expected to do. Sometimes I do certain things, and I feel like I just want to be appreciated, appreciated for them.
And
And I
yeah,
just
this is
wanted to share
echoing
that
the comment.
last week was the first time that my daughter stopped what she was doing and came over and gave me a hug, and then went back to what she was doing, right?
Mm.
So it had nothing to do with anything else, but I recognized in that space, like, it took a while for all of those diaper changes and cleaning up, vomit, and patting her to get to sleep for like hours at a time on so many evenings, finally came about. So one is the obligatory side of things, but it's nice to be appreciated, and it comes in its own time. So I was just trying to link that back to what you were saying.
Yeah. Yeah, and who knows even why she just came up and gave you a hug. She could have thought, "Oh, I love the way that he invited that cat to the house," or whatever.
Hmm.
The values
could,
of a
could
three and a
could
half
be,
year old.
could be.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just think that it's somehow a level of growth internally for me as a sign when I no longer really require the immediate response of a thanks or gratitude or appreciation, but I have that wherewithal and that inner, um, I guess I would say, understanding that, look, I brought what I could to the party, and I did my best, and I believe I brought value here, and I know I brought value here, and now it's time for me to bring my wares to the next scene or episode or whatever that is, and I just keep on going with that.
Mm, that's great, man. I,
Mm.
I like that, and it stands outside of failure or success. You're just being you.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, and
just being,
there's no criticism of like, I
yeah,
mean, yeah, you just do your head's down, you're doing the work, and you're just being
yeah,
yourself, and you're
and it's
not
not,
expecting a more criticism.
and it doesn't have to be grand or grandiose. You know,
Mm,
it doesn't have, and this I think is one of the, it's almost like a misfortune of the way that, whether it's social media or how things are portrayed, that in order for me to do something that's good or worthwhile or meaningful, that it has to have so much appreciation or acknowledgement or so many likes in order for me to recognize or believe that it was actually worth something. It's so external, right? It's
yeah.
so it's so really, it needs to be that big thing when really it doesn't. A very small gesture. And in fact, there's a book called, I don't know if you're aware of the concept of ikigai, the Japanese concept of ikigai. We know it as a it's been co-opted in the West and the way that it's been explained, but it has to do with meaning and purpose. And there are four areas, like, I mean, the way that we've understood it in the West, which is, you'll see these graphs. If you look up ikigai, and I'll put some show notes to this as well, which is like, what I love to do, what I'm good at, what I can get paid for, and what the world needs, something like that. And then there's all this overlap that's there. And so there's some, this is a Western version, Western understanding, that if I can get all of those to line up, then I get like this amazing connection to the world. But there's another book by Ken Moji, which is called The Little Book of Ikigai, where he explains it more from a Japanese perspective, like how Japanese people really understand it, which is finding meaning in small deeds, in every small action that we do. So, like,
Mm,
I lived in Japan for 3 years, and I saw this. Like, when people give a business card to somebody else, some people know this, right? It's like giving with two hands and a bow. So it's, I say, "Hey, here's my card," like people are just like flipping it off, you know. But
yeah.
it's done with intention and purpose, and we see those things in Japanese society, like, the tea ceremony, even something that's as small as making tea is
Mm,
purposeful. Um, Gifts and gift wrapping, even if it's not a matter of like a big thing that you give somebody, but the fact that care was
mm,
taken in that process of giving a small gift. So, um, just being present in the small things of life, and finding the value for, I'm speaking personally, as we like to say, right? Um, Finding value or meaning for myself in doing those small things, whether they're recognized or not by the other person. Um, that's where I
mm.
can find my value or my own my own meaning and my own satisfaction with myself, that what I'm doing, what I'm bringing to the table. So yeah,
Yeah, I mean, and it has
it's
everything to
definitely.
do with what we've been talking about. Like,
Mm,
you know, the not that Ringo Starr was insignificant, but just laying the groundwork for something else, or cleaning the dojo, or all the ways that are sort of quote unquote background, and then yet it's like the context, we maybe don't know why we perform as well as we do, or have a clarity of thought the way we might, and it might have everything to do with just like the way that someone prepared our lunch, and maybe that's our hero for the day.
There you go.
Yeah.
So wow, a re-examining of the hero, the hero's journey. We really touched on a lot of fascinating things today, and we hardly even got to the MN stuff, the specifics. But I want to keep it that way, rather than go into your profile. I was already prepared to. We have your MN profile, but I would say let's even save that for another time, because I think the plane that we're on right now is sufficient. And I also want to bring to everyone, listeners, viewers, to you, and to everybody, that it's not just about the 19 traits that we're looking about, but there's really something deeper that I'm looking to achieve with multiple natures, in getting to understand who I am and how I can be of value to myself and to others in the world. And I think we touched on a lot of that today. So
yeah.
So I want to say thanks for all this. And any parting thoughts, or things that you would like to share, things that we might want to that you'd like to even maybe about the clinic, or I don't know, about
oh gosh,
how people might find it, because that's a way that people might be able to connect.
Oh boy, we're in conversation from Cambodia to Oakland, so anybody finding their way to 3220 MacArthur Boulevard will know that that's the place. Jamie has no problem booking people, so I don't know that I need to plug that.
It's not a plug. It's just of interest. People might really connect with you, and obviously, if it's someone who you're connected to, they might want to see your great work that you've also done in developing it. But it's up to you.
Yeah, I mean, please stop by. There's an orchard. It's 3 lots together, so a third of it is an orchard with I think it's something like 9 fig trees and 7 citruses and a giant avocado and like a bunch of plum trees, lychee, and
oh my God.
Yeah, I know, it's off the hook. There's apricots, and yeah, you kind of name it and you can slip on it on the ground. But what else? What would be, I'm installing solar. I think it's important people know that at least in California, that the time for installing solar as a resident, and even commercially, that's coming to a close basically in a way that's financially feasible at the end of April. So it's important that we get out and put solar on our roofs, and I install solar, and you don't have to work with me, but it's like one of these awesome ways that we can facilitate just life on the planet in a more sustainable way. And so be in touch if that's something.
All right, so we'll put some links if people would like to get in touch with you for that. So if you want some healing, you need some electrical wiring, or you want to get your solar moving, or just want to have a really cool conversation with Pete Erwin.
Come on, email me about anything.
Thank you so much. All right. So now,
Stephen, always a pleasure to hang with you in any context, man.
Yeah.
Maybe no one watches this, but I got to sit with it. So thank you.
Me too.
The cat enjoyed it. I'm sure.
There were some great moments that came out of it. So I appreciate you for that. And all right, let's see if I can get the end sequence to do its thing. All right. So I had a fabulous time with Pete Erwin today. And this is Multiple Natures Live, where we talk about identifying your potential and aligning it with what you do so you can thrive, whether it's big things, big worldly things that are purposeful, or even something really small like just helping out a friend. That's also valuable and worthy of enabling you to thrive. So this is the place where you find that. And in case you'd like to find out about your own nature, here's a way that you can do it. Let me get the right button. You can take the Multiple Natures test and find out about what makes you tick. That could also lead to some purpose and meaning in your life. So Find out more about it at the link there. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel. And with that, I'll say thanks, and we'll see you on the next episode. Bye.